Yeah, welcome to Monk's Musings. We're going to cover several topics on this related to content creation, or whatever we feel like sharing that day. Topics are going to vary, but we always welcome chat's input, so feel free to chime in at any time, and we'll read as we go. Our topic today is going to be, what is your ideal video game look like? Another way to say this would be like, what would be a game that could come out that you would quote unquote know life? A lot of people say they know life WoW. That's a big one that people
Been there.
yeah.
Yep.
Two of us have been there.
Yeah, two of you have been there. I've specifically avoided WoW because I've had friends that have no lifed WoW. And it's a little, hear how addicting it is. I have played it, but it's also not one of those that I think that I would be able to do just like all the time. But before we get started, like, what games are you guys playing currently that you're enjoying?
Okay, so recently you and I, and it's not something that I would consider a perfect game by any seen anything like that. But the most recent game, even though I haven't played nearly as much as you guys have in recent history, that I've really enjoyed was Sea of Thieves for a variety of reasons. I thought it did a really great job of having a consistent cell shaded look that was enjoyable to look at. It was really beautiful to see the way that they had water graphics sort of stuff, but also their minimal use of UI was really fascinating to me, and just how well it worked for that game. You and I have talked about how many frustrations we have about how easy it is to grief in that game and be griefed by people. I think that was one of our biggest issues. Like, that was the one thing when I played it the other day. When I went back to it, I said, "Wow, why did I stop this?" And then that happened. I said, "That's why."
Yeah, you
but
got reminded
that's one,
real quick.
yeah, that's one that I really enjoyed. Um, Probably the one that I most enjoyed playing recently.
Yeah. Hey, Maelstrom, welcome in. Yeah, Robert, definitely feel free to weigh in whenever. Yeah, so, oh, I not here. That's okay. Um, we're all switched around now on the screen. While we're waiting on Adnoth to talk about maybe what he's playing recently, the reason that I chose these two for the first episode, especially, and for this topic, is Adnoth. Here, I'm gonna delete these. Adnoth and Dyer have pretty differing play styles as far as games go, and I thought that both of them together would be a good contrast. They'll have some different arguments, I think, for why a game is good or what aspects of a game they look for. And then I'm kind of in the middle. I play a lot of stuff with Dyer and I play a lot of stuff with Adnoth. We do play things together, but their views on like really good games that they can sink a lot of time in is very different. And again, I'm kind of in the middle. I can go either way. I like kind of slower paced games. I like really fast PvP games sometimes. So I thought that they would have really good opinions and would make some pretty valid arguments for either way. I guess I'll go next. So I've been going back and playing some single player games. A lot of you know that I really like Destiny, which is a massive multiplayer online game. And I still love Destiny. I've loved it since Destiny 1. I've been playing Destiny 2. And it's always been something that I can always go back to when don't want to play other games. I'm like, I'm gonna play some Destiny. Recently, it's been less of a I've had less of an urge to go to Destiny, but yeah, Robert, it's like that's my core game for sure. Yo, Ace Platinum, how's it going? It's been my core game for sure, but we're what is happening? Gonna go back and forth between like different single player games as well. So I've been playing like some God of War again recently. I want to get back into Horizon Zero Dawn, because and that's like the biggest one of the big topics we're going to talk about today is like what brings you back to a game or what makes you want to keep playing that game. And with multiplayer games, you know, you can always go back to those. Sometimes single player games you play once all the way through, or maybe you don't even get all the way through it and you put it down and you'll come back to it later and just like finish the story. But and then so I'm playing that, and then kind of played some Daisy and stuff last night too. That was pretty fun. I like stuff like that. I know what Adnoth's gonna tell me he's been playing, but I want to hear it again and how it's going.
Yeah, right now I'm playing the Final Fantasy VII Remake, which is dope. I'm enjoying it a lot. Was there a second part to that question about what we're supposed to...
I mean, just why are you enjoying Final Fantasy, and why I mean, just go into some detail about Final Fantasy.
I mean, part of it for Final Fantasy VII, for me at least, is, I mean, the nostalgia bomb of playing the original when I was a kid. But one of the big things that draws me into games is really compelling story that really does a good job of building up characters and makes it so that you really get drawn in. You want to find out what happens to the different characters. Usually one of the biggest things that I've found is I really like games that have some kind of a familial relationship between characters when they're not actually family. I don't know why that grabs me so much, but it does.
Family you choose rather than what you're born with.
Right, exactly. So I mean, Final Fantasy's like that. The Witcher 3 is a great one for that.
That's an amazing game. Yes.
Yeah, that game. I mean, I from the start cared so much about what happened to Ciri when you were trying to find her that, I mean, it just propelled me through the whole game. Yeah, so building the games that really have those personal relationships that are very well thought out and developed, that's a big thing for me. But on totally the contrary of that, I mean, for me as well, I would say my core game over the past few years has been, or almost 6 now, has been Destiny, because it's just so much fun, and I'm a filthy titan, not in Destiny, but in life. I want to run in and smash things, so
you want to eat
I enjoy
crayons
the
in real life.
gameplay a lot. Yeah, I eat crayons and I smash stuff. So I really enjoy it, even though the story at times has been non-existent or terrible.
Yeah, I feel that for sure. Real quick, Ace in chat, you got all of those right. Good job, man.
Exactly right.
And Robert,
That's what I do all day.
Robert says, I know a guy that loved Final Fantasy VII so much he got it tattooed all over him. He is referring to himself.
Oh, okay.
So, Mass Effect and Dragon Age games, I got so sucked into the stories that I had to play all of them. Yeah, that's a good point. Like, that's like me with the Uncharted series. I loved Uncharted so much. I was like, and that, even though that wasn't super long ago, all the Uncharted games have super nostalgia for me. And like, I know it's not the same as Final Fantasy, but I didn't really get into those games, so I have that kind of nostalgia with other games. And I think it is in the more recent era, like not including like Nintendo 64, Super Nintendo games, stuff like that. My first system that I bought for myself was a PlayStation 3. And that Uncharted series was like the first series that I played. And then The Last of Us I played because it came with the PlayStation. And I was like, oh, cool, it comes with a game. I guess I'll play it. And now The Last of Us is probably one of my favorite games ever made ever. So
I agree. Yeah, I forgot to mention that one in my family you choose discussion because I mean it was the same thing there for me as well.
there you go. Favorite fast food and sodas. You just look like the type of people who would enjoy eating lots of fast food and soda. I don't know how to take that, but I will say,
but I can't stand soda. Like,
yeah,
I don't know. Like sodas in general just make me feel like sludge. I hate them.
I do love Dr. Pepper. I'll tell you that.
Not Verner's.
Verner's is good.
Verner's is
I
good.
forgot about that.
It's not my favorite.
I
but
only
it is
ever have
good.
that when I'm at your house, though. Monk.
Oh yeah. I've been never played Final Fantasy myself. I watched best friend play 8, 9, 10, 12. Nice.
So I'm really surprised at enough that. So maybe it's just because I've only ever played Destiny, but the fact that your first go to was like favorite games are the ones with the familial connection, which are more sort of adventure RPG type stuff generally.
Mm-hmm.
That's really interesting to me. Did not know that about you, and it kind of it also makes me wonder about how just in our real world lives, like how all of us have connected with each other's families in such a way. Like we all know each other in person and we have for a while, but I really feel like the connection that we've had is a family you choose rather than what you're put into a situation with, because we all love each other and
Yeah,
that
I agree.
much. And I wonder if that has anything to do with your interests in some way, maybe subconsciously or otherwise, with those kinds of games.
Yeah, I mean I know that it does. I mean, I've thought about this before that's I mean, the family you choose is not that I have a bad family. I love my actual family as well, but just there's
Be careful
something
here.
about just personally that connection that you
Yeah.
build with the people that you choose.
It's almost like an
has always drawn
expectation.
me a lot.
Yeah, there's an expectation with like, here's the family you're born into. You almost have this expectation of have to enjoy your time with these people and as much as
Right.
you can. But you go out and you forge your own bonds. That's kind of it. That's interesting.
Yeah,
Monkly.
that's
Yeah,
a good
I
point.
actually before Destiny, I didn't really play like first person shooter games almost at all. I mean, growing up in like in middle school, I played Halo, but it was just at a buddy's house who had the game. I was terrible at it. I enjoyed it, but I was terrible, and he just enjoyed killing me all the time. And then because Call of Duty was like such a big thing when I was in college, um, I played it some, and again, I was awful. And I enjoyed it okay, I guess, but it wasn't really my thing. My thing had always been uh first person RPGs, single player RPGs rather. And yeah, then a buddy of mine that got me into another one of my favorite game series, which is Assassin's Creed. That's one that they pulled me in pretty hard, and then I had to play through all of them, even through the bad ones. Uh, and he was like talking about this game Destiny by the people who made Halo. When at first he wanted me to get it when it first came out and start playing with it, and I was like, nah, this doesn't look like my thing, because again, I didn't like first person shooters. Well, eventually he convinced me. I downloaded like the little trial thing on the Xbox 360 and started playing, and it felt really good as a first person shooter, and I was able to actually like do stuff on it even though I was terrible at these games, I guess because it also had that like magic ability thing. And I just threw coffee over myself because I talk with my hands. um, and it was so much fun that it just pulled me in, and then I really got sucked into that game, and now I like first person shooters a lot because that one was so enjoyable that I've gotten to the point where I'm decent at them now.
Yeah.
So it's like what you part you've had the most experience with that kind of game, and also it seems like it has a little bit of that nostalgia benefit as well for you.
Mm-hmm.
Something Maelstrom said in the chat. Seriously started playing games with Doom, and then later WoW got me into the social aspect of games. Huge thing for me when I was isolated almost completely from the world. Has any game been like that for you growing up? A game that has gave a social aspect or other need that wasn't available otherwise? That's a really good question.
Yeah.
And I think when
That
I
is a
think
good
of
question.
social, any kind of game, like obviously because we play it so much, Destiny comes to mind, and I've made so many friends over the years because of Destiny. Kind of like Adnauth's story, I have a friend that told me about the game. I don't even know that he plays it anymore. He played it on Xbox, but he was like, it was before it even came out. He was like, hey man, have you heard of this game that's coming out? And he kind of explained it to me. I was like, oh, that sounds really cool. But I had a PlayStation, and I was like, yeah, I'll check it out on my PlayStation. And then I downloaded it, and I was like, oh yeah, this is pretty cool. And I played it for a while, and then I figured out like that you could just go around the world, and like these people, you could just like message them and say, hey, like, do you want to join my fire team? Do you want to go play this activity with me? I had a guy when I was on PlayStation 3, before I even started streaming. I even remember his screen name, and I haven't talked to him in maybe 7 years now. But we would literally just get on every night and go farm materials on planets and just talk. And I had no idea who this guy was. But like we became pretty good friends just by getting on Destiny every night and going and farming planetary materials. We had very little in common besides the fact that we loved this game. And it was the most boring activity you could do in the game was go and farm planetary materials, and we just did that and talked for hours. It was really cool. And then like Destiny is how me and Adnoth like really became close. Was actually met his wife first, and then he was and then I met him like a couple days later, but then we were talking about video games because like I like to talk about video games, and so does he. And he mentioned that he played Destiny, and I didn't really have anybody that I was close to that also played the game. I was like, hey, me too, and then we started playing Destiny together. So as far as social aspect goes, Destiny has really helped me. And then like I've made friends through the community, going to what was Guardian Con the first year or the second year we went.
Yeah, what's it called now?
It's no, it is Guardian Con. It was Destiny Con, and then it was Guardian Con, and now it's yeah, it's GCX. It's still Guardian Con Expo.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But unfortunately that did get canceled this year because of everything going on, but they are going to be doing a live stream of it instead, which is really cool. Yeah, social aspects of games, if y'all want to go ahead and chime in on that.
You guys like my peanut eating cup?
We still have like some of those cups here.
Really?
Yeah.
So very similar to Maelstrom. I played WoW during a similar period of time where I really didn't. I essentially made my first friend in college. So WoW was something that when I got it when I still had dial-up internet at my house, and it was really like I was that dedicated to like I really want to get some game.
Yikes.
It's like the only game I get all year because I was limited to that with the circumstances. And eventually we moved. Oh, no, I remember waiting 7 days for this to download, and then we ended up moving, and we got into a place where we could actually get better internet, really playing this game, and without disconnecting every time the phone rang. And so I was really enjoying
Every time
it. But
the phone rang.
But at the time, one of the things that happened was I needed to play on a low population server, so I chose an RP server so that I would have any when I was on dial-up. But that translated into me finding people that were doing like role playing things, and I was like, oh, that's cool. I'm gonna engage with this, and so based on that, I started really getting into like the role playing aspects of video games, and and this is probably why I play so much D&D today. Like I play a lot of D&D in part, I think, because of my early experiences with WoW.
Mm,
Um, but yeah, so I just saw the comment about the dial-up thing too, but
3 days. Yeah.
but yeah, so I met a lot of people that I really enjoyed talking to and spending time with. Until eventually I realized that I was escape from reality in a negative. But as for the social aspect, that was my social life a few years.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had sort of a similar experience when it was like late high school, and then in the first couple years of college was when I played WoW a lot. And I mean, it was the same kind of thing. I mean, I got on there, and I mean, we would do. I mean, I enjoyed playing it by myself too, but I would get on and play with a couple of real world friends that I had would be on sometimes. But I mean, I played way more than they did because they were smart and I wasn't. Uh, and so I would find, I mean, any way to be able to get people that I had no clue who they were, to be able to run through dungeons and raids and that kind of stuff. And just, yeah, I did that for a while. Probably the next one that I did wasn't for quite a few years later, but was Star Wars: The Old Republic,
Oh
which is
yeah.
another MMO. I did that one a lot, and I mean, I had in that one, I was in a really good. I don't remember what they called it, but basically a clan. Uh, and I mean, I still to this day have our clan was called. I think it was Ashes of the Republic. And I still in my phone in my contacts have Ashes and then someone's screen name for communicating to set up raids and doing things. I mean, I've probably got like 12 people in there that I haven't talked to in years that
Never
are
delete those.
Awesome.
and then Destiny was the next one for me that was very similar. And ironically, I have the same situation Monk did with Destiny, that the person who got me into the game also doesn't play anymore.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Crazy how that
it's
works.
Pass
I
the
know.
torch.
Best friend got you into WoW, stopped playing regularly, and just kept going for years. Still keep getting subscriptions every few months. 7 years with no stops. Yeah. A lot of people really like WoW. It's that's one of those games that it just keeps growing. Like there's no stop to WoW.
They just released an alpha for an expansion called Shadowlands, because I keep up with a website called just to see what's going on and so
What's the
there's
website called?
MMO Champion, MMO
Mhm.
dash Champion, and this has got to be like the 8th or 9th expansion, something like that at this point.
Yeah. They just
Well, it's
keep
been around since 2004, so it's like
yeah.
16 years old.
I know, but there's something to be said. There are a lot of games that have withstood the test of time in really interesting ways. That if it came out today, I don't think people would have been as interested in it today if it was
Yeah.
fresh. But because of the connection that people have with it, like I only played it because I played Warcraft 3 and I loved Warcraft 3 and I was like, "Oh, I want to play in this world. This looks awesome." And but I think that in part it's nostalgia like we were talking about earlier, but also just I don't know, I guess that's a really large part of it probably. People feel committed to a brand that they basically grew up with. Like the same reason like the Harry Potter books, right? You've got a bunch of these books that I think if you came out today, they would have been just lost in a bunch of other books that are very similar. But people grew up with them during a time where they were like the ages of those things. And so
Mhm.
you have these people that basically had these 7 or 8 years where they were like, wow, this is my life. I think WoW sort of works in the same way, where you sort of grow with it, and you're playing a character that's growing with it because you literally can take the same character through every expansion. And I think people have that sort of basis of nostalgia and connectivity with
One
the
Yeah,
game
it'd
in a
it,
greater
basically be
spectrum.
like if you played the same D&D character for almost 2 decades.
Right. Well, that's kind of like the point I was gonna make was that it's basically these things become part of your identity. So you associate these games or any of this type of media, like you were saying, Harry Potter, WoW, things that you grew up with. People like retro games still because they played them as a kid, and now they can speed run them because they're so freaking good at it. And it's like, this is part of me, and that's why I play this game. Like, you associate your identity or some point of your identity, some piece of your identity with these games, which is really cool. Yeah, Twitch and social games, exactly. I get that for sure.
I know that, like, when you originally introduced the topic, you were sort of interested in what is the like, if you were describing your ideal video game. So, like, for you, Monk, what would you say, like, if you could create any video game with unlimited resources and you just, like, it was just for you and not necessarily for anybody else, what would that game look like for you?
Yeah, for sure. Let's get into it. I think for me, I don't have a fully developed game in my head or anything like that, but you know, I love open world games, things like Destiny, the way that it does that. I like survival games, so like DayZ for me gets really close to a game that I could know life. And if people don't know what DayZ is, it's like the original survival game. It's like a zombie apocalypse type game. You're on an island. You have to scavenge for resources. You find different weapons. You have to keep yourself fed, hydrated. You have to keep your blood level up, or you will just keel over and die from loss of blood. Hey, Spirit.
I've done that several times in the one day I've played it so far.
Yeah, so like DayZ gets really close to me of a game that I could just play all the time, like one of my perfect games. It needs to be something open world. I love survival genres. If I could mix like the gameplay mechanic type game, the mechanics of the gameplay of like a Destiny type game, first person shooter, and a survival open world like DayZ, that would get pretty close to something I could play all the time.
Like if DayZ's combat felt as good as Destiny's combat.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And like in DayZ, you can build bases, and a lot of modded DayZ servers, I'm sure, would get pretty close. I think the engine itself needs to be updated to where it could do some of the things that I would envision my perfect game doing.
So it sounds like if you could imagine Fallout 76 being good. That's
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so like if Fallout 76 actually, if Bethesda didn't just have wanted to say something else. If they didn't just have a steaming pile of a game, it would get really close. Like, because when that game started being promoted, and you saw the trailer and the country roads started playing, and you see like all this landscape, and you see this, all the visuals and stuff that were supposed to be so good, and like this, all the things that they promised us,
right.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like the best
And
graphics or anything like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, but I
Well,
love like Fallout
there are so
4.
many things about that game that outside of the game are infuriating anyway. But
Yeah,
just with what happened around it. But yes, I agree. Like, I feel like it has to be a really great game if it got all the things right that it should have had right in the first place. But I mean, aside from all the bugs and everything. But anyway, that's sort of aside from what we were talking about.
I realized.
I feel
sorry,
very strongly.
really quick. I just realized that this is the first time a lot of you are actually seeing Adnoth or Dyer, their face. That you've always heard their voice playing games with me. Yes, they are very handsome. They are both married though, so calm down, everybody. But yes, you're right. But yeah, like
More importantly, we're all three involved in a bromance with each other. So
that's true. That's
yeah,
true.
we're taken.
They're taken
Yeah.
in more ways than one. But yeah, I agree. Like, and to your point, like Fallout would have been. I was so excited for Fallout when I heard about it and I saw that trailer. I was just ecstatic because Fallout 4 was so good. And you could do a lot of stuff like that in Fallout 4. The gunplay wasn't like amazing, but like it was a survival game and you had an actual story to it. But you could also open world roam and like just kind of do your thing if you wanted to. So yeah, I mean, something a mix between those games that I mentioned, I think would be pretty close to a perfect game for me.
Open world survival with great first person mechanics.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. Open world survival, first person mechanics. I do like the third person aspect of DayZ, which you haven't played yet because the server that we were on for some reason wouldn't let us switch to third person. Right. But really? I think, yeah, I don't know, it was weird. But I think for me, there also has to be a role play aspect to it. So if you are on multiplayer, I would like it to be like a multiplayer game online. There needs to be room for some kind of role play because I think that's important in any kind of game such as that.
You mean like built in, like where it supports it as part of the game that's intended, and not just like some people decided to do this?
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, you can,
or at least have the functionality where that makes it easier.
Yeah, I think it needs to be a choice. Not everybody's gonna want to role play in a game, but like sure. DayZ was like a huge role play. Like there are role play servers for DayZ, and they're really cool to watch. And it's some of the most fun content or most interesting content that I've ever seen is like people doing survival role play. And I think that's really cool. And I think there needs to be the option for something like that to happen in a game like that.
Yeah.
So yeah. What about you guys? Give me Outlast plus Destiny plus DayZ. I've actually never played Outlast.
Is that another zombie survival game?
I think, or I might be thinking of the. Is Outlast the parkour one? No,
that's Dying Light.
That's right.
Outlast, first-person survival horror game developed and published by Red Barrels. Freelance investigating journalist decides to investigate a remote psychiatric hospital.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
It sounds cool.
Yeah.
Hey, Constancio.
I'll let you go first, adding off on this, because I thought about this a lot yesterday, and I made like a 41 document. So
no. Yeah, half the podcast is half the show is gonna be Dyer explaining his game that he's created.
I'm gonna be that conspiracy meme guy that's pointing at all the stuff behind him.
Oh man, yeah, I am not nearly that prepared. Honestly, when you guys were messaging me about this yesterday, I was thinking like, okay, I've got to come with something, and I know I've thought about this a lot in the past, and I'm just not remembering what I want anymore for some reason. But over time, it came back to me. But I don't have a 41-point plan.
Get out. No, I'm just kidding.
Is this like
point per day?
Yeah, that's like this is your platform to be elected the president of video games. So yeah, like I said, the story element of a game is real important to me. So, but I also love MMOs. So for me, something I've always wanted that I know is completely unrealistic and will never happen unless we just take leaps and bounds in technology, is I want an MMO that not I can play it by myself in MMO, but that I can just hit a button and it is now just me. And and it's complete. So I switch from WoW to The Witcher 3 but it's the same game and story
So that
and everything.
when you don't really want other people to be, you
exactly.
can just sort of phase
When
into a different instance where it's just you.
Yes, before the entire game.
Nice.
And so I would probably most of the time would be playing in that single first person or single player version. And I would want it to have a really compelling story like a Last of Us or Witcher. But then when I get to harder content, because I want it to still be like an MMO that has like dungeons or raids or strikes like in Destiny, I can hit the button and then call the two of you in and be like, okay, come join my world, but you still get like progress so that it carries over to your version as well. Then you can come in and then we can do that. Or, I mean, if I'm just doing side quests, you guys could join me and it would be like farming for stuff in Destiny, except we're doing still compelling storyline things, just not the main quest, very much like Witcher, where and that would be my one of my biggest prerequisites is side quest wise. Like I don't know how the whole video game industry hasn't figured this out at this point, because The Witcher's been out for what, like almost 5 years now. Side quests need to be compelling. They're not just a reason to spend more time in a video game or something you have to do to make your character more powerful so you can do the higher level content that's the main story. They need to be connected to the world in a real way, not just go get 27 berries for this herbalist so that she can craft you a potion.
I was just thinking, go get me
Gonna make a real nice food.
three bales of wheat, please. I need to feed my cows.
Go take 50
Right.
wolf paws, but not all the wolves are gonna have.
Exactly.
Yeah, I forgot about that too. Yeah. Not all the wolves will actually have paws. And if you find berry bushes, some berry bushes just won't have anything on them, even though you can see it. Like the berries are right there, but you can't have them.
So it sounds like the big draw for you would be the capacity to just be as social or as isolated as you want,
Yes.
without having a negative effect on any sort of progress.
Correct.
Cool.
And then as far as like gameplay, there's rarely been an action RPG that I really thought the mechanics of the combat and stuff were like really good. Whereas, I mean, for first person shooters, Destiny just feels right when you're playing it. I don't know what they did that makes everything feel correct, but it does. So I would either like that or I want Bungie to make the combat for like a sword magic RPG thing so that it also feels right in this fictional game world that I'm in.
I do
and
know,
I want to be able to parkour like in Assassin's Creed.
Yeah.
And I want to be able to fly on dragons. Those are both non-negotiable for me.
Assassin's Creed was
to do with the rest of my requirements, but they have to be there.
Yeah, I feel you, Celtic. Yeah, they Bungie, I did hear that Bungie is working on a new IP. I'm assuming it's gonna be another first person shooter.
Probably.
I don't know that for sure, but yeah. But it would be cool for them to make another like open world type game.
And I assume you'd want it first person as well.
Yeah, like I said, I do like the fact that in like DayZ you could switch back and forth from third to first depending on what you're doing. And I do kind of want to change my answer after hearing Adnoth, and I don't know why. I don't know why I didn't think about this, but when I was talking about survival games and stuff like that, mixed with the mechanics of how Adnoth said, like how good Bungie feels, or Destiny feels, because Bungie made it. Just open world Last of Us.
Yeah.
With the with the story, how good the story is, but make it bigger. Open it up to open world and give me better gun mechanics, and it would be like pretty close to my perfect game. Like, and still give me that story. Be able to go on side quests and like save the world if I want to, but let me take my time saving the world. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and the side quests like that are compelling in the context of the world, even though they might not be directly tied to the Joel and
right.
Just like in The Witcher, that I mean, the side quests didn't necessarily have anything to do with your main goal.
Yeah,
but they felt important still.
Consencio says, "Sounds like you want to play RuneScape, Adna."
Yeah, I've heard. I've heard that before.
RuneScape is pretty good, but I don't know if it's exactly what you're looking for. Welcome back, Robert.
I think there's a level of whimsy in RuneScape that like I'm not necessarily about if I want to play a game where I'm playing exactly who I want to be in an RPG. I mean, for some people that's awesome, you know. But I feel like I'm generally going to want a more grounded, like this is a dark fantasy realm or something like that, where it's not that. Oh yeah, and I can like summon a little bank goblin when I am level 1 or something. I don't know what happens in RuneScape these days, but that sounds like something that.
RuneScape was fun. I played that when I was in like middle school.
Yeah,
like
I remember
original
RuneScape, the old version.
And that was what got me into that kind of, I guess you would call it MMORPG type game. Yeah.
Yeah.
But like going and collecting things and like building your own armor and building your own weapons and going on side quests whenever you wanted to, or just like doing little, open world type stuff whenever you wanted to also. So.
And not saying that it's not a fun game, because it really is a fun game, but I think that would be one of the things that sort of the theme of the entire thing would be sort of not quite what I would be looking for in one.
Yeah.
All right. So I think it's time for the 41-point plan of how you're going to turn around gaming in 2020.
I was about to go on to the next point, and I forgot we haven't even heard Dyer's spiel yet.
Well, thanks, bud.
No, I'm excited to hear it.
All right.
You texted me last night, and we're what did you say? You were like, so I couldn't come up with anything, and then I came up with like 3 pages or something like that.
I've condensed it into 1 page. But yeah, no. So anytime I do any sort of public speaking, which I'm involved in a variety of ways, I to like a chart and continue to condense it down into like note card size thing, and then I just sort of memorize it. But essentially, the overview of what this would be, this turned more into it changed from what would I really like to see in a video game. This is the video game I would like to see, and which might sort of be the question you're asking already. But the general description would be a 1 to 12 player co-op open world RPG designed with a focus on randomly generated content, impactful choices, and replayability with internal mod support. But to go through each parts of that, the reason I say 1 to 12 player co-op is imagine playing in a world like Skyrim, but you play it from the very beginning with 1 or 2 friends in it, just actually playing Skyrim with 1 or 2 friends, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like how cool that story would be, right? Or The Witcher, for instance. If you played either of those, but you had the capacity to start it as a co-op game, I think that would be amazing, because there's something I like, as much as I've loved MMOs in the past, when it comes to just wanting to play with friends, one of the things that isn't always great about MMOs is you don't feel like you're making impactful choices that actually change the world. I think the closest I've seen is actually ES, in the sense that when you have a certain quest that you finish a certain way because you have multiple ways and you finish it, that area of the world is actually phased to your decisions. Whereas like whenever, like if you chose to go into this imp citadel and like blow it up or leave it alone and let it infest, like that world will look like that for that character, and it sort of enters a different instance as you go through the borders of that area, specifically based on what content you did or what decisions you made. But I think it'd be really interesting if essentially this world is has a lot of randomly generated things in it with the idea that you can replay this in a variety of ways. And here, I'll explain this. So, open world, a lot of scenically beautiful areas to explore and discover between quest hubs. So, one of the things that I love the most about randomly generated terrain, for instance, Minecraft, as simple as Minecraft is, and you're just looking at a bunch of equidimensional blocks on a large scale, sometimes you'll go through areas in Minecraft and you'll look around and say, wow, really beautiful mountain valley, really beautiful canyon, or like this is like aesthetically pleasing and it's really cool to look at. And it was all naturally generated or randomly generated.
Mhm.
So imagine this in this game, every time you start a world slash story to play in with your friends, it's a large map, let's assume like the size of a Skyrim map. But the wilderness is randomly terraformed, and the quest hubs are randomly placed around the world whenever you start this game. So any time that you replay this, it's different. But with that randomly generated content, um, so those quest hubs would be like cities, villages, the lairs of villains, or other special areas. Those are randomly placed throughout it, and to some extent, even the interior of these quest hubs or dungeons are randomly generated. Um, but between all these areas, the world is randomly terraformed. Wilderness is making up certain biomes, etc. Very Minecraft-like in that sense. They make up the open world. But the other thing that I think would really make this game interesting is if when you start the game, it also randomly assigns a main storyline to this world that you can play. So, like, say you as an example, the world might look very different if the random storyline assigned to you is focused on a war between two armies. So there's like military forts and stuff all throughout it, but you're also playing an RPG with your in this world, and you can decide on any spectrum of morality how you guys are going to interact, whether you start in the same hub or eventually meet each other there. Very much D&D plus Skyrim, yes.
Yeah.
Phantasms.
Yeah.
So
But
basically, like, it sounds like you're playing D&D on a video game level, but the game engine is your dungeon master,
yes,
and it randomly assigns things based
right.
on rules and things like that.
Yeah, so and say the different storyline might be like, and instead of this one being the war between armies, it's like you're trying to stop these portals from opening that have like some otherworldly entities that are trying to get into this. But it could also randomize what those entities are, like demons or undead or monstrosities from some twisted alternate reality, whatever it is. You're also randomizing elements of that story. So there are several elements of every story that are random. So you're always having a different experience. Speaking of that, that's one of the things I love the most about the board game Betrayal at House on the Hill is the many different kinds of endings and haunts that you can get through it. I'm
It's great
love that game.
fascinated. Well, I'm fascinated with randomly generated content.
Yeah.
And I've always had a fascination with like even just random number generators and random list generators and stuff. But so one of the things I mentioned is like having impactful. So if you have this world like this and you're playing in it, almost like it's a Minecraft seed, right? Where you generate this world, and now you're in. It's different every time you start a new seed, or you can stay in it as long as you want. But players can operate within any broad morals, a very broad moral spectrum. So the consequences or the rewards for the decisions they make can be, great, bad, whatever. But they could potentially like every NPC is killable because you can just restart this world or start a different one, right? So you could like intentionally or even accidentally kill somebody that makes you an enemy of a kingdom in this world out of
That'd be
the
cool.
right. Or you could kill a major villain's like lieutenant far earlier than you should be able to, and therefore that final boss fight will be that much easier. So all these
Yeah.
things actually have effects. Or if you happen to like kill some good character that you're maybe even the villain ends up reaching out to that character in some way and, hey, do you want to join my side? And you can play from the side of evil in it. You have all these choices that are built in for you to be able to do. So there's many different ways that could even pit you against your friends, or you could decide to all be working together. So The other idea would be with impactful choices that nothing is permanent. So villages can be razed to the ground or rebuilt, and buildings and landscapes are destructible in some way. And certain quest or player activities could even end with quest hubs being prematurely destroyed, and then you're affecting like other people's progress, or you're sort of having to make big decisions like, I have these quests that intersect with each other, where one of them is requiring me to do this for this reward, which is actually going to destroy a different quest hub. Like stuff that makes the decisions meaningful. Speaking of board games that sort of gave me that sort of feel, Risk Legacy is a board game that I think all of us have played, or at least maybe none of us have played together. I played it with some people, but there's like a version
All
of
of us or none of us.
It's
one
one
of
of
those.
the two.
So it's a version of Risk where you end up putting like stickers on the board where like nuclear stuff is happening. That place forevermore, you cannot really build in it, and if you're like, your troops will suffer. And there are cards in that game where
Oh, really?
after you use them, it says
Tear
now
them up.
to destroy this card because
Yeah.
it can never be used in the game again.
Yeah.
I think, and that's one of those things. It's like, wow, this is a really cool version to do it. So of course, all that sort of speaks to the replayability of that content. But I would also love to see it where if you had a thing like this, you could choose like, you know what, I want to do this specific thing again, like this specific mission or main storyline again, and everything that you could randomly generate, you could from the beginning of the game before the world is built be like, let's not randomly generate things, let's lock these aspects of the game, but randomly generate the rest of it.
Be
That's
like
the
this
general idea.
playthrough. I had the war play time last time.
Right.
Now I want the epic quest
Right.
version.
And
Couple points
and
real
because-
quick.
yeah,
Like
go ahead.
what from
I'm
what
sorry,
you're
I
talking
got too
about.
excited about it.
That's fine. So like in other media, like Spirit was talking about Bandersnatch. If you guys saw that, was like
Oh, the
extremely
Black Mirror thing?
intuitive. Yeah. So like
Yeah.
it was kind of groundbreaking on the way that you like consume media, as far as like things that you're watching.
It was a
Abby
choose
says
your own adventure TV show.
Exactly.
Like the old books. I had a Spider-Man one I read a lot as a kid.
Abby's talking about Cabin in the Woods, which is a great movie if you guys haven't seen it. But basically, obviously it's not a choose your own adventure as the watcher, but like in the movie, it's a randomly generated horror, basically. That the characters themselves had to choose. Maelstrom says, random generation always reminds me of Diablo 3 Dungeons.
Yeah.
And then Mass
that's
Effect
true.
Risk, no one actually destroyed, though nobody actually destroyed the cards. And something else you were talking about reminded me about NPCs. I've never played this game, but Vampire is a game that at any time you can choose to kill and drain the blood of any NPC. Although
Interesting.
when you do that, that NPC is no longer at your disposal, and if they have something later on the line that like maybe they had information that you needed on a certain mission or character, they're dead. And you can't, so you can choose to like let them live, or if you're hungry and you need the strength or something like that, you can kill any NPC in the game, but now they're gone for that playthrough. And so like there's so many different ways to play the game.
I always
and
felt like
finish
the
the game.
Assassin's Creed games should have had that. Like, I mean, you're an assassin, so
Right.
if you want to kill someone, you kill them. Like, I mean, I felt like that was something the game was missing. Would have been good.
But yeah, go ahead, Dyer.
Yeah, I mean that was most of it, and I just also I would love in this theoretical game as it exists in my head that like after you finish the main storyline of a world, you can either continue with these characters. By the way, I forgot to mention like as part of an RPG, making sure the character creation is like awesome so that you can actually build who you want to build. But you can either go play a new world or start a new campaign in the same world that you've already like got these items stuff and built yourself up with your friends, which ideally this wouldn't be just like a thing that it lasts a few hours, but it would ideally each campaign would like last for like the amount of time that like say the main campaign of Skyrim, I'm just using that as an example.
So like a 30-hour campaign or something.
Yeah, so that you get together with your friends and you feel like you've earned something with it, and you get the catharsis of being like, wow, we did this together. but then you assume that a certain amount of time has passed at the end, sort of maybe has a thing while it sets up the rest of the world and puts the city hubs and things that it needs for the next campaign in. But you also have some of the effects from the previous campaign in this new world. I think that would be a really cool way to sort of, be able to play the new storyline without destroying your progress in some way.
Mhm.
And of course, the reason I said mod support is because I think that modern RPGs, thrive on mods being accessible, especially if you're already. And the reason I think that's specific for RPGs, especially, is that people want to play like these idealized characters of whatever they want to make in some way, and sometimes the game just doesn't support exactly what they want, and that's one of the reasons that, like, if you go to like Skyrim Nexus mods or something, or Fallout Nexus mods, you have all these things that are all about, I want this exact kind of, and this stuff either to populate the world with more, or to make me more like, or to make my character more like this archetypical hero or whatever, or villain that I have envisioned them as in the first place. um but anyway, that would be the basic idea of basic idea of like, basically, a game that you can play with a group of, like, a large group of friends, but all do together, that feels like a single person RPG, and it also has support for just doing that with one person too.
Sounds
Yeah,
like we're saying a lot of the same kind of things.
Yeah.
it is.
Well, and one of the things that we had in common of it is the social aspect of being able to do this with friends,
Yeah.
um, in a way that doesn't feel like hokey, like some MMOs sometimes will,
Yeah.
you know.
Give me a really good single player storyline and find a way to incorporate other people into it. Like take The Witcher 3 and make it so that someone can be Vesemir or be uh
Oh yeah.
Triss or whoever else in.
Or at the very least, have, like, when you choose backgrounds for your character at the beginning, make them matter. Like, you feel like, wow, I am playing a character that is the scion of some important person because I get all these benefits that other players aren't getting, or something like that.
Yeah. When you were talking about mod support, something that I really liked about another game I played, actually Dungeons and Dragons, Neverwinter.
Yeah.
When that was
That's a good
in
one.
beta, I played it a lot.
Mhm.
By back in whatever the level cap was then, I maxed it and stuff, and it was a lot of fun. Uh, that has a lot of aspects of what we're talking about, but with kind of meh gameplay.
Spirit, thank you so much for
And
getting that
honestly,
sub
the
to
story
Maelstrom.
was meh too.
Appreciate that support, man.
Which
I
is
remember
kind
playing a little.
of dumb that's kind of like the whole point of what you're
Yeah,
doing.
when you
But
take away the core element of the
right. So the something they did really well though was they released, I don't know what they called it, but like the API basically, so that people could craft their own dungeons and missions and challenge events and put them into the game and people could join in. So I mean, it's like if you remember back with Halo, you could create your own multiplayer maps. Well, I mean, you could create end game content for other people. I mean, that was really cool. So having something like that in this fictional game that we're all discussing, where people can use their creative minds to create things that you don't have to play, but if it
Yeah,
interests you, it's there, and you can
yeah.
do whatever you want with
And I
it.
really feel like that, for instance, Minecraft, I think, is another example of a game that today is popular as it has been. But I think one of the things about Minecraft that people still enjoy to this day, as the game, is that it gives you a lot of freedom in creativity to make things that you can still to this day make things that nobody has ever seen in the game. Like, you could just make an unlimited amount of, it's literally only limited by your imagination, really, and the time that you're willing to put in, and you can make really amazing stuff that your friends can enjoy there with you. And I think that's a really neat aspect of just video games in general. I think lend themselves to more creatively minded people anyway, most of the time. But I think it's sort of like a keystone example of that.
Yeah.
I
We already
don't
kinda-
know about the more creatively minded things. Remember, I'm the Titan that eats crayons and smashes things. So
That's right. Crayon eaters.
Well, but here's the thing: like you're able to use an unusual visual art form to get catharsis out of experience in a story that you're not directly experiencing, but you can apply empathy in order to get the same emotional response that like characters in these fictional people are able to experience. Like I feel like at some point that's a creative talent that might be like not something that a lot of people think about, but that
yeah, that's
requires
true.
you know
Kind of really attached to your imagination
right
and what you can, how you can relate with things that aren't real.
right. We're all about relating to
Wait,
things that aren't real.
are
But
you
with
saying
being able
we're
to
just trying
relate to
to
real
escape?
people, because we all want to be able to have other people in the game want them.
Right.
Yeah.
Are you saying we're all just escapists?
I think you're muted, Monk.
Hello?
Yep,
There you
I
go.
can hear you now.
Oh, are you saying we're all just escapists?
Yes, I know I am.
I think we already kind of covered this. Uh, but in the games that you've created in your mind, how would you control griefing? Because a big part of massive multiplayer online games, not so much in Destiny, because well, and I'm kind of gonna answer the question here, but um, I'll just not talk about Destiny because I want to get out this explanation first. A big reason that people maybe will not come back to a game like Sea of Thieves, like you were talking about earlier, pretty open. I mean, it is open world. It's a small map, but it's open world. You can go and quest and things like that. But other players that are on the same server as you can come in, and they can kill you. I mean, they mess up what you're doing. You have to start all over from where you began. You try to go and finish your quest, and they're waiting for you. And people do that for fun. They're trolls. They hack or whatever they want to call it, and then or some people do that. But then the griefing is just kind of they'll stay there, and then they see you coming, and they're just gonna sink your ship again.
Yeah,
Or
it's just
in
part of the game because the game is designed to give them so much freedom.
right, yeah, and so I think we've already really kind of covered this, but like how in your game would you control that aspect of it?
So I know for me, the way I would control that is the option to drop in and out of having multiplayer and being able to restrict who is actually in your game if you want to. I mean, that I can just pop into a world server and have whoever is there, or I can have my own and only let certain people in, or we have a party server or something like that. That would be how I would do it, because I mean the most successful way classically is like what games like Destiny do, where they just give you almost no ability to affect other players or the world.
Mm-hmm.
And it works, but for my ideal game, that's not what I'm looking for. I want to be able to affect. I just don't want people who are crazy to be able to affect the world. Uh, so yeah, the that's partly where the option for me of being able to go from multiplayer to single player, depending on what I'm looking for at that moment,
It'd be a really
comes
effective
from.
way
Yeah,
if it's built like that from the ground up. That makes a lot of sense.
yeah. I think the main thing is just a separation of PvE and PvP activities. Whether you do it the way that you're talking about, with the ability to drop in and out of the same area in a different instance in a different play mode, or the way that Destiny does it, where it is completely separate. I don't know. We're not game developers, so logistically, I don't know how feasible something like that would be. The way that Adnoth is talking about it, obviously,
No,
it can
the
be
way
done.
I'm talking about it is very impossible with, I mean, Is it physically possible? Yes. Is
Yeah.
it realistic with the resources that would be necessary to run it and the uh, planning, like Dyer was talking about? This would have to be a very ground up concept. I mean, when you start
Hmm.
developing the game, it would have to be with that in mind. It's just not going to happen. Way too resource intensive.
Yeah.
I think if you
What?
were doing a sort of the game that I was describing, ideally, you're doing it with your friends, but there should probably also be a situation in which you could have online matchmaking for times that, I mean, it would make a lot of sense. It wouldn't make any sense to not have. Let's put it that way. But if you wanted to control, especially in a world like that where it's intended, where anybody can do anything,
Hmm.
um, I'm not sure how well that would work out in a game like that. The closest thing I can think of is again, if we assumed that Fallout 76 what had become a good game, one of the things that it did have going for it was that you essentially were not you could not be flagged for PvP conflicts, but say somebody wanted to attack you, they could shoot you a few times and they would be flagged, but the amount of damage they're doing to you until you are flagged for PvP is so small that you're basically taking no damage at all.
Hmm.
Um, but you could
Oh,
theoretically,
interesting. So they
yeah,
kind of took the concept from like old WoW PvP servers where
yeah,
you would get flagged, I think Division works this with the
right.
Dark Zone, but
So
I
without
was
the
I was just
you
gonna
just
talk about
randomly
Division.
die from other people
right.
that you
So
didn't want to fight them.
so theoretically, you could still be killed by them, and if you shoot back, then you'll be flagged for PvP, right? But if somebody kills somebody that's not flagged for PvP in the game, then they have a map marker that anybody can see over the entire map, in which they have a bounty where whoever kills them gets like 3 or 5 times the loot or something like that. And that map marker doesn't last until they're. I don't think it lasts until they're dead. I think it keeps lasting until like 15 minutes, 20 minutes, something like that. So they could get killed repeatedly. So it's sort of like an incentive not to do it. Um, so that is one way. I'm not sure how effective it is, and I haven't been on 76 in so long that I'm not sure. But that is one thing that I thought was really interesting when I first heard about their anti-grief attempts.
Yeah, one of the things I was going to talk about was Division 2 and how the Dark Zone works, because it's still in the open world. There's not a quote unquote separation of like server. You're still in the same instance, but you walk into this area and it's like, okay, it's, this is dangerous. There are more rewarding things in this area, but other people are trying to get these rewarding things, and now they can shoot you. So I think Division actually did this the best way I've seen so far.
Yeah, I agree. I hadn't thought about it earlier, but yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Spirit says, think a genuine PvP VE would be awesome, like a fighting and war style game, having outside elements affecting the game, whether it be other beings or landscape or the weather. Yeah. And then Robert asked, how far from a 1-to-1 real world MMO do you think we are?
There'd have to be some sort of fast travel.
Yeah, really far.
That's where the whole flying on a dragon comes in.
Yeah. Something I was thinking about yesterday was Cyberpunk, I think, is going to be really interesting. I'm interested to see how they handle Cyberpunk. There's been like differing rumors about how the open world aspect of it's going to work. I feel like it's going to be a futuristic type GTA almost. But I think it's going to have a better story.
I'm really interested since it's being made by Project Red.
Yeah, like a lot of this that I see is like GTA 5. I mean that has a lot of these aspects, especially because they have the ability for such robust modding that most of the stuff, if it's not there, people have made it there. even though that's a game that I've never had a desire to play, other than when I see all these modded versions of videos online, and I'm like, "What? You can be the Hulk? How?" Yeah,
Yeah. It's like true freedom, GTA
Yeah.
mods. But yeah, I've not really had an interest in GTA, but it does hit a lot of boxes, which is odd because I think there's like a stigma around GTA.
Well, when we were in middle school, the reason that all of my friends played GTA was because you could go beat up hookers.
Yep.
Like, I mean, so that's the stigma that I have of it. I'm like, I have no desire to do anything like that.
Right.
So the game just has always been pushed off for me. I've literally never played any of them. And
Yeah,
there's
so like
been,
basically
seven.
the basic mechanics are there, it's the content that's the problem. Like
Right.
or that's
And
not
that was
an
also
interest.
a day and age where I think people were more vehemently in general pushing against video games in a variety of ways on a larger scale. And that was like the go-to example of look at what these are doing to our children.
Right.
And just like, being in kindergarten and people being like, you can't read Harry Potter in the school. It's evil.
Right.
You remember that?
Yeah.
I do.
It's like
It wasn't kindergarten though.
No, for you it
Not
was
that young. Yeah.
yeah.
yeah, Robert says if GTA had other content, it would be amazing. Yeah, it would.
Right.
It would. It hits a lot of the boxes, but it's just like they focused on the wrong type of content. That's not going to appeal to everybody.
And then the
It's the freedom that I think
combat
is-
mechanics that I've seen also are more, I mean, like your typical third-person RPG that doesn't feel real great.
Oh yeah. No, it
is
doesn't
what
look like it
looks
feels
So
great.
it would need an update there, but most of the rest of our stuff is tagged pretty well in that game.
You know what
Yeah.
I was thinking just based on what we were talking about today and how one of the reasons you chose to have both me and Adnath on here was because of how different you expected our answers to be. Is because like you really love Destiny and it seems like you really enjoy first Adnath. Whereas like I've never liked them because there's something that's like really boring about them to me. But now that I say that, I remember when we played this game, this really obscure game on Steam called Zombies Monsters. You and I played that, Monk.
Yep.
And I loved it was a third person shooter, but I loved how it felt. And it was the only shooting game that I really enjoyed. And it had very similar it was very similar to Gears of War.
It's a cover shooter.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
It was a cover
okay.
shooter. And I
You would
love
like Division.
and
Yeah,
I think
he should
that's
play
the thing I
Division
liked.
with us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Division was on sale not too long ago. I don't know if it's still on sale. It was like
$3.
Yeah, it was like $6 or something like that.
Nice.
But yeah,
That's
you
when I
actually might
picked it
kind of
up.
like that one. I feel like the user interface is lacking on GTA. Yeah, for sure. I mean, it definitely needs to be polished as far as the combat goes, and GTA is another one that is really interesting. Kind of like DayZ, there's a huge roleplay community around GTA. Like that's like one of the main things that people do on GTA is roleplay because there's so much customization, and you can do anything. Which is really interesting.
I feel like it's the only AAA video game title that is in that extreme modding and customization world. I mean, Skyrim has a lot of modding, but it's still Skyrim.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
GTA, you can make it whatever the heck you want.
Right.
So there are some people that have been working on a mod to do multiplayer in Skyrim, but they've been working on it for a long time. And I would love to see that happen though. Like if that happens, we've got to try that.
It would be dope, but
That would be really cool.
That one is so hard because the game was not designed.
Yes. Oh,
with
that's
that
the
in
thing.
mind
They have
at
a lot
all.
of work to do.
It's like recreating the game.
Yeah.
Haven't seen DayZ since it was an alpha. Yeah, it's still pretty good. I own it. Dyer just got it. Again, like I was talking about earlier, there are problems with it, but there are so many like modded servers and so many things you can do with it. You can do RP with it, or you can just go in and survive and like build bases and stuff, which is what I really like to do.
Did you guys see any of Tim the Tatman's content where he was role playing as Dale Morris?
Yes.
It was so hilarious.
Yeah, it was pretty good when he tried GTA RP. I mean, he fell off of it pretty quick, but it's really fun to watch, honestly. Like any kind of RP I got into like not too long ago. I think DayZ is what really got me into watching RP though. There was a couple of streamers that would go into this like specific server that I'm actually a part of now. But I haven't really run into anybody while I was playing it, and I haven't played in that server for a while, but yeah, it's really interesting. Things you can do. One of the other bullet points we have here is in your game that you've created, making veterans of the game feel special. One of the things I thought of that was the easiest, in my opinion, was an achievement system. People on like PlayStation have these medals, or what do they call them? Like trophies, medals, achievements, whatever.
Something like that. Yeah, I don't remember.
And people like to platinum games.
Yeah.
It would be a little bit harder in like a MMO that we're talking about, but like even in Destiny, there's the triumph system that people chase triumphs all the time. And it's like a pride thing, which is really cool.
This was something that really drew me in. I mean, not initially, but after I've been playing for a while, was that you could spend a bunch of time and go get this dragon mount that was different than all the other dragon mounts, and it didn't actually change literally any way. But I mean, you would spend 10, 15, 20 hours of whatever the activity was trying to get this one thing. And I mean, and it like the one I'm thinking of, it wasn't tied to like PvP, it wasn't tied to a raid, it was really obscure sort of quest line, sort of scavenging for things. And eventually, I mean, it was guaranteed, it wasn't a random drop. There was a specific list of things you had to do to get it.
Yeah.
But I mean, things like that give you something that looks dope and everybody's going to be envious of, or at least I know I always was envious of it, which is why I then spent the time to go get it, even though it added nothing to my game. So things like that I mean, they could be tied to a trophy system, kind of like how Destiny does some things, but mostly when they're doing it, they tie like an emblem, which,
Yeah.
I mean, again, that's still, it doesn't affect the game at all. It's just, look at the cool thing I have. But for me, the thing I'm flying around on being dope is a lot cooler than the little picture under my name on the character screen being something unique and cool.
So it needs to be
like
dope and
ships.
interactive.
Yeah,
Like ships and sparrows in the game that you can only get from certain activities.
right.
Sort of like that.
Yeah, like I loved in D1 having the taken ship from beating Oryx on hard mode.
Yeah.
That was, and they brought it back into D2 for the Whisper quest, doing it on heroic. And I still don't have that because that quest is so hard. But yeah, I loved that ship, and it was the same reason. I mean, it didn't affect anything in the game really. It was just kind of a trophy that everybody could see that showed, look, I did this really cool thing.
Something that we can touch on quickly, because I think we've been talking about it this entire time, but games that have done these kind of things we're talking about really well. We've already talked about Destiny, Division. I wanted to mention DayZ, we already talked about, but I wanted to mention like Zelda Breath of the Wild. Zelda Breath of the Wild is such a good open world game, and Nintendo, it's rare that Nintendo makes anything bad anyway.
It's also rare they make open world games.
It is, which is why I think Zelda Breath of the Wild stands out so much as just like a shining example of what an open world game could be. And a lot of people that haven't even played Zelda in the past picked this game up and really liked it. And that's another one where you could literally walk out of the first shrine that you wake up from and go face Ganon if you wanted to. Or you can take your time and you can do every single side quest and platinum the game. And I've been watching speedruns of Zelda Breath of the Wild recently that are hilarious. I watched some people, I need to remember their name so I can shout them out, but Point Crow on YouTube. He's actually streams on Twitch as well. I just recently started watching some of his videos, and he does like ridiculous speed runs, like or challenges. So like he beats the entire game using only shields, or he beat the entire game using only one stick, or he does like speed runs.
They break.
It's really funny. You should watch his video, but you should and then like things like feeding all the dogs as fast as possible. There's like 16 dogs in the game, but
I didn't know there were dogs in the game at all that you could feed.
yeah, man. But yeah, stuff like that I think is a really good example of a game that people can enjoy, whether they are completionists, speedrunners, just hardcore gamers, or just casuals. Like something like that is a really good example of games that do things well. Anybody else have any other games to cite?
I hadn't thought about Zelda Breath of the Wild, but it's a
great
game. And I don't understand. I've never actually watched someone speed run it and just skip everything and go straight to fighting. What's his name?
Ganon.
Yeah. I wanted to say Go Fanon, which is
Go
the
Fanon
Forge.
Yeah.
Destiny. Yeah. Anyway, so I've never watched anybody do it, so I don't really understand how you possibly could beat him when
it's insane
at the beginning of the game and have 4 hearts and crappy weapons, but I guess it's possible.
Yeah.
And so that is really cool. I mean, I feel like, yeah, we've been talking about it a lot. There are a lot of aspects of some different MMOs that throughout the that got a lot of parts right. Like they would get an individual part really right, and then everything else would be very vanilla and what everybody does.
That's actually a pretty good transition into what I think is probably our final topic is developers that failed with a potential great game, i.e. Fallout 76. And what prevents the developers from getting something like this right?
Some of it.
So I've thought about that.
Yeah,
go ahead. And I think that one of the biggest pitfalls for a lot of developers is they're trying to.
You cut out completely there.
Sorry. So you hear me now?
Yeah.
I think that one of the biggest pitfalls for developers is when they try to appeal to too broad of a range of players, because one of the things that I think, if you look at a movie or any other kind of medium that somebody takes as entertainment or art, one of the things that is always recommended in the design of those is to figure out your niche, your group of people that you're trying to appeal to in some way, your audience, right? If you do that in such a way that you're like, let's try to make sure we got everything for everyone, then essentially you become your game is a jack of all trades but a master of none. And it's very difficult to master something when you don't have a focus on, this is what we're going to make great to make this stand apart from all the other games that are out there right now. So I think Fallout 76 being a great example of that. They tried to implement a lot of systems at launch that just weren't going to work well together. And as a result of that, first off, Bethesda needs to work on getting their games not infested with bugs. But I think part of the reason that they are is because they don't dedicate the right amount of time. They don't allocate the right amount of time to the perfecting any of the content. And I think that you see that with a lot of I can imagine a lot of games being like, I know that anything that I've designed, obviously in the variety of art or mediums that I've done, I've had a lot of this. I see that I didn't get there. I've tried a lot of different things where if I didn't have a direct focus and an idea of this, the primary thing that I want to accomplish, then I would generally fail at doing anything that I felt like was worth sharing with anybody.
Yeah. It's like and that happens with a lot of games. They get too excited. Developers get excited, then I'm sure they have deadlines from publishers and everything like that, and they say, okay, I know that this is wrong, fix it the night before as best as you can, we have to release this game.
Right.
And they push it out, and then later on, good example of this would be Hello Games and
No Man's Sky.
Yes, thank you. No Man's Sky. That promised all this stuff that was not there when the game was released, and then people got really upset, and then they fixed it later, and then by that time, half of their core audience that was so excited about this game coming out had essentially rage quit and said, I'm never going to trust this developer again. Mm-hmm. And even though it's a great game now, again, half of their audience is gone because they can't trust them.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to go through my examples.
So go ahead. No, go ahead.
So my example was what Zarian's talking about in chat was Anthem. And
Anthem.
It had a lot of the aspects of what I'm looking for. It was supposed to be sort of like Destiny in a lot of the gameplay and the way the game worked kind of systems, but with Bethesda's ability, or not Bethesda, BioWare's ability to craft a compelling story, and then added in extra things like, for me, you could fly around. Well, that's one of my big things that I like doing in video games. Well, so that was cool.
Dragons.
Right. I mean, it wasn't on a dragon. You were suit, but that's okay too, as long as I get the freedom to fly around. I would just prefer it to be on the back of a dragon.
Wouldn't we all?
Yeah. But it seemed like it had that, and it was supposed to have a robust crafting system for creating components for your armor, and it was supposed to have really good side quests, and it was sort of open world, but also very instanced, kind of more like D1 was, but kind of like a mixture of D1 and maybe like a Diablo kind of way that things were instanced. It seemed like that was most of what I was looking for here. I mean, my big before it came out was, it's a BioWare game, is the gameplay gonna be fun? That was my concern, is flying around and shooting things gonna feel good? Well, they got that part mostly right, and then botched every other aspect of the game so severely that, I mean, like a week after it released, it was just blacklisted in the entire gaming community of, this is the worst video game ever. Don't waste your money on it.
Until 76 came out.
True. Yeah. And it's just very disappointing. And so that's my example. And I think my biggest reason why studios run into this is because of money. Not because it takes too much money to make a good game, but because they're usually trying to hit some kind of a release window when the niche that they are building is super hot. And which, I mean, makes sense. I mean, we see this in movies all the time. I mean, if you are releasing a dystopian world kind of game or kind of movie right after the first Hunger Games happened, it was hot. It was just guaranteed to make money. But now, not so much. So I understand them trying to hit this release window. But
that's just business.
But it pushes them that, okay, Destiny's really hot right now. Division, after they got their stuff together in the first game, was really hot right now. We need to have the answer to it. And we do. We have a great idea for the answer to these two games. We can take them and put in the BioWare RPG aspect and make it perfect. And so they start building it, but then their release date that the higher up business people chose as their premium release slot for making the most money comes too quickly and the game isn't ready, well, I mean, the higher ups get to the people who really love the game and are creative mind crafting it and are not satisfied with where it is. They're not the ones that get to say, no, we're not
Mhm.
releasing something that's garbage. My baby needs some more time to grow up before I send it out into the world. Which is one reason why I appreciate in gaming the last like year that we've had what feels like a significant shift in that we've had like 6 years of games coming out before they're ready and everyone hating them. And in like the last year, that seems to have shifted. There are a lot of videos over the last year that have said, no, we can't release our game yet. We know you guys really, and we're glad you're hyped about it, but we need 6 more months. Like Last of Us Part 2 is the biggest example that's on the tip of my tongue just because I've wanted that game for so long. And I was
Yeah.
disappointed as a user. I mean, as a player, I really wanted the game a couple of months ago whenever it was first supposed to be released. But I know
Neil
what's his
Druckmann.
name? Neil
Drunkman.
Yeah, Neil Druckmann. I have so much trust in him
Yep.
as a game director and designer from the first game that when he came out and said, "It's not ready, we can't release it to you," is like, "Oh, that's a bummer, but I'm gonna give him time, and I'm
Yeah.
still gonna be ready for this." I mean, when it comes out, I'm gonna be excited. It doesn't
That's
matter that it missed its little release window.
that's one
Uh,
thing we can definitely agree on is if it's something that you're passionate about, especially a game that you played the first one, and this happened kind of with Destiny 2 as well. We were like, it'll come out when it comes out. And like Last of Us 2 is one of those that I do not want them to rush this game. If it's
no.
rushed, then people are going to be so upset because there's so many people that love this game to its very core, every aspect of it, and because it's one of the best stories ever told in a video game, in my opinion.
I agree.
And they I was the same way. Like I heard it was being pushed back. Obviously, I was upset about it, but I wasn't raging about it because I was like, you know what? After thinking about it for a second, if they don't get this right, it's going to be trouble. And I would rather they give them as much time as they needed, even though I want to play it so badly.
I know.
I want them to get this perfect because I know it's going to be perfect if we give them time.
And
But
the
that's an
thing
example
is,
of
like,
the creative mind. Neil Druckmann, he's the creative person behind the game. He's not the business sense person
Yeah.
at Naughty Dog. He got to, if not be the person who made that call, he obviously got enough influence that the call got made.
Yeah.
and it's
And
not like
so
you're gonna
the
lose people.
businesses trusting those creative developers with that level, yeah, I feel like is essential.
You're not gonna lose fans over something like that if they're already
No.
devoted to
Right.
the franchise, right? And I think this is a little bit outside of the realm of video games, but I think it's a really good example of um, companies making risks like they haven't done before and delaying things. And so look at the Sonic movie, for instance. Like
Yeah.
everybody hated that
Yes.
awful human teeth, weird monkey boy teaser trailer. And then
Monkey boy.
yeah, it looked like the kid from Jumanji.
He did.
And
Oh,
then
he did. That's weird.
and then they delayed that so they could fix it and get it right. And then what I think probably wouldn't have been as popular of a movie anyway was suddenly a lot more respected for what they decided to do. I
Yep.
think the same thing applies. Like you have a huge audience for these things, and people really respect when you take the time to perfect it, which I think also just on a sociological standpoint really speaks to the way that the modern video game player does view video games as art that need to be perfected in the first place in before they're released. And I think that's there. I just watched a long form video essay on video games, and I thought it was really fascinating. Um, but uh, and that's an aside. But I think that if you give trust to the people that are going to use your product and be forthright and upfront with them about what's going on and the reasons you're doing things, like they might be disappointed, like both you guys described, having this disappointment over delay. But all in all, you're gonna have so much more respect for the creators, the game itself, all the minds decisions that went into that, that you're almost certainly going to get that as soon as it comes out, whether it's 3 years later, you know?
Absolutely. And I don't think that any developer that I know of, and if they have, they shouldn't, has regretted delaying a game to make it better.
Mhm.
The regret comes with Anthem and Fallout 76 when they release a game that is complete garbage and is not ready.
Yeah.
And then it's just better safe than sorry, honestly, with that kind of thing. Like,
And I know
that shouldn't have been released.
And in part,
Yeah.
like, you've got to. One thing that's maybe overlooked a lot is that, you know, still a studio company that you have to or a development company, you have to be able to, you know, pay your employees and everything and make sure that you're releasing things in such a way that you're able
Sure.
to get that thing out. But at the very least, you should, like we discussed a while ago, allocate your focus in such a way that you're like, we can release a very polished version of this, but be upfront about that and make sure that you're like, hey, we're gonna release something that's really polished, and then like in a few months, a better PvP system or something. Like, if you're just on have to date, then I feel like I'm saying at the beginning, you know, allocate the time that you're spending on these things and make sure that you're getting something right instead of everything wrong. Like, it's better to get one big major aspect of a game right, in my opinion, and like another one not so great, than to have it all just not work.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the nervousness from companies to delay things comes from there are games that I can think of that looked amazing. Everybody was hyped about, and they literally never happened because of delays and the money ran out and the studio closed. One is the Hideo Kojima game Silent Hill. Another
Wait,
one.
that was canceled?
Yeah. Yeah, Silent Hill, they had the demo for it was released, and then like 3 years later they were like, "Okay, this isn't happening. It's done."
That's funny. I remember hearing
Um,
that about that game forever ago, and then like I just never, I guess, looked into it. But
Another game was this was an Xbox exclusive game that was, I think it was called Dragon Scale or
I remember you telling me
Dragon
about that
Scale,
one.
something like that, but it looked awesome.
Yep.
And I mean, we never got a demo, but we got a lot of in-game or in-engine footage of
Yep.
what the gameplay was like and things, and it looked really cool. But it took too long, and the developer Xbox or somebody decided that it wasn't worth the investment anymore because they weren't making anything with it, and so it's just gone. It doesn't exist, even though it looks like there was most of the game there. They were just making it perfect. So
And then it
those
never
kinds of things
happened.
do happen,
Yeah.
and they are the destruction of an entire company when it does. So I understand the desire to, okay, we at some point we got to just say it's good enough and kick it out the door. But you got to find the balance between them.
PlayStation's latest tweet. Thank you, Spirit, for pointing this out. PlayStation is offering the Uncharted series, the collection, Nathan Drake collection, which is the first 3 games, for free on PlayStation from April 15th through May 5th, and also
Cool.
the Journey game, which is cool. So if y'all don't have Uncharted, I was talking about that at the very beginning of the stream. Amazing game.
Another Naughty Dog game.
Yep, Naughty Dog has not made anything I haven't liked, honestly. But yeah, they made Nathan Drake.
I wasn't a big Crash Bandicoot
Uncharted,
person, but
Uncharted and The Last of Us. So,
or wait, were they Crash Bandicoot or was it Ratchet and?
It was Crash.
It was Crash. Okay.
Yeah, because they play Crash Bandicoot in one of the Uncharted games. I think it's the 4th one. You can play Crash Bandicoot on their TV. It's hilarious.
That's awesome.
There's a
is
section.
it like just a tiny little sliver, or could you literally?
No, like it zoomed in on the TV, and you can play PlayStation 2 Crash Bandicoot on their TV.
Can you play the whole thing?
No, I mean it's like 2 levels or something like that. But yeah, it's pretty cool. So that's a
I haven't
thing if
played
you guys have
Uncharted
PlayStation.
4. I played 1 through 3.
It might be free still right now. I just downloaded it to my PlayStation because they were offering it for free recently. So you might want to check on that. It might be the last day actually, since they're coming out with the Nathan Drake collection tomorrow. This is going to be the first of what we hope is going to be many installments of this series. It was, by my standards, pretty successful because I had fun doing this. Thank you guys for coming in and like talking. I really appreciate that. I appreciate everybody in chat being here as well. If you do have any kind of topic suggestions, feel free to post them in the Discord. I will probably make a new channel in the Discord for this very series. You got anything y'all want to shout out while we're here?
I don't have an internet presence, so I'm good.
Dyer is making a D&D campaign.
Oh, so with the potential for us to play it on Monk's stream at least one time, we talked about maybe doing that at some point. But
that'd be fun.
I have a essentially a fantasy western with a low magic fantasy western.
Adnoth?
I have what used to be a Twitch presence and a Twitter presence in Adnoth006, so you can go follow me there if you would like to keep up with what I'm doing. But more specifically right now, I started in last September, started a computer business. So I shout that out. I'll put the link in chat for my business's Facebook page. But we do a lot of remote computer support, build desktop computers for people. Around me, I will come and actually do physical setup things for people as well. But I'm figuring most of you aren't in Indiana, so that won't help you at all. But yeah, so it's called Aerotech Solutions, and if you guys are interested in sending that a follow, checking out the kind of stuff I do there, and if you ever need a gaming PC, hit me up. I'm pretty good at it. So let me know what your needs are, what you're planning to do with it, and I can specific setup that will do exactly what you're looking for, and then build it and mail it to you. So
nice.
Be able, just look out for that. Being able to support me there, I'd appreciate it.
You guys can follow me on Twitch. You're already following me on Twitch, but I am going to post this to YouTube, so make sure you check out my YouTube channel, and then leave a like, comment down below if you have any topic suggestions as well. And everybody on YouTube, make sure you hit me up on Twitch. It's at Mvnk. Again, thanks you guys for coming. Make sure if you're on YouTube, seeing this on YouTube, hit that subscribe button to see more content like this. And we'll see you guys later. Thanks again, guys.
Thank you.